Hello, this is Phil Kakulas of the Blackeyed Susans. You're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Just personally for you, what was it about bass guitar that first attracted you initially?
It was the music of Tom Waits.
Really?
Sometime in the early 80s, I can remember hearing Blue Valentine, I think was the first one I heard. I just kind of really fell in love with the double bass at that time. I've been kind of playing a bit of guitar and piano before that. So that was the time I took up double bass first and then electric bass later.
Now, you were still in Martha's Vineyard at the time the Susans formed. Do you recall what the initial plans were for the band? Was the initial intent for it to be very much just a part-time holiday type thing?
Very much so, yeah. Dave and the other Triffids would regularly return to Perth for the summer and had sort of gotten into the habit of creating a kind of summer holiday band to amuse themselves and make a bit of money sort of over the Christmas break. So the Susans initially were just another band kind of in this tradition, and I think our original intention was to play 6 shows and record the 4 songs that we'd written and then split up.
So can you pinpoint a particular moment where it began to feel more like just a part-time holiday group, where it started to become a little bit more serious?
Well, after, as you say, I was playing in Martha's as well when the Triffids were still going. I think Rob was still playing in Chad's Tree. I moved to Sydney, where Rob was, and we got a Sydney lineup together. But even then, it was just something that we were doing on the side. I think probably in '91. When Rob and I both moved to Melbourne, and then Dave moved back from London to Melbourne. I think about 91 would be the time that we started to take it kind of more seriously, and it was around that time that we enlisted Warren Ellison and Jim White and Graham Lee as what was the first lineup of the Melbourne Blackeyed Susans that went on to record All Souls Alive.
Mm. I was browsing around on the net the other day, and Wikipedia has 22 different people listed as members of the Blackeyed Susans at some stage. Enough for a footy team. Can you name what you would consider to be a definitive lineup, or is it impossible to do with a band like that?
Well, look, each of them I think have had their appeal and their achievements. I guess for me, as much as I enjoyed, that All Souls lineup with Dave and Warren and Jim's, exceptional players, but in some ways, the band at that time, I think, was perhaps less than the sum of its parts. It's that kind of, that team of champions rather than the champion team. I think it was a couple of years later when Dan Luscombe-Kin and Mark Dawson came into the band, and we played a lot of shows around that time, and I think we really kind of developed a kind of band sound and a kind of direction, I guess, that we've been pursuing ever since. Probably in around, Spin the Bottle of 1997, something around then, I guess, was when it really, I guess, came together as something that I felt, that was quite compelling, satisfying. Yeah.
Do you think the floating, revolving nature of the band's lineup has had a lot to do with perhaps the longevity of the band?
Absolutely. I think it's really is the key to it. In about 2003, I think it was, that we took the decision to return to treating the band as something more of a project, something that we would return to sort of every few years and accommodate people's other interests and work and so on and musical pursuits. And I think, that really has been the key to it lasting as long as it has. It's very hard, when you're living in each other's pockets and pursuing it, a full-time endeavour, to maintain, I guess, your excitement and interest in it. It did become a bit of a grind, and we contemplated splitting up in the early 2000s, but sort of agreed that we'd see how it worked, sort of moving back to kind of a project kind of based thing, and it seems to have worked quite well.
Was that an easy or difficult decision for everyone to agree to back then, or was everyone pretty much on the same page?
It was a pretty difficult decision back then.
Yeah.
No, there was quite a difference in opinion amongst the band about what might be the right course of action, and I guess it was only with time that in a way it kind of worked itself out, I guess, with time. As I say, we may well have split up if perhaps, Dedicated, the ones we love, and Shangri-La hadn't been, perhaps we hadn't felt we felt kind of encouraged by them, that there was still some life in the old dog, perhaps, if it hadn't gone that way, there's certainly, and I was certainly in two minds as well about, I didn't want to overstay our welcome, and I didn't at the time look that kindly, I guess, or even really understand, why bands, continue, sort of regardless of where they might be in the arc of their life. And, I thought to myself, every band has a natural lifespan, but it's much harder to judge that when you're talking about your own band. So, it's something that we've just, we've never had a great plan, and we never thought, as I say, that it would last, more than a few months. So, it is something that we just kind of make up as we go along, and as long as we're kind of enjoying it, I guess we'll continue.
Going back to the All Souls Alive album, I guess it was your first full proper album project. At that stage, David was starting to take a back seat vocally, allowing Rob to do the majority of the lead vocals. Was that a specific desire of David's to do that? I guess because he was focusing on his solo work at that time as well.
Yeah, and look, that wasn't an easy time either. I guess in retrospect, the way you've described it is perfectly accurate. At the time, Dave had been singing, at least half the material, and, we did consider him, a full-time member of the band. So we were, Rob and I were very keen for him to continue playing that sort of role, but he had made it clear, that there was always going to be a solo album in the offing, and, he wanted to run the Susans and his solo career in parallel. And, I guess we learnt to accommodate that. And looking back on it now, it does look, and I can see that, that Dave may well have always had the idea that, he would help kind of establish the Susans and then sort of, withdraw into his own, pursue his own work.
Mm. Now, your role in the band has extended to production at times. How have you found that experience? Is it a little bit more challenging producing a band that you're also a part of?
Look, it is, but in some situations you feel a little bit just like the traffic warden directing, traffic in and out of the in and out of the studio. But I've always sort of felt that I had an idea and about how I wanted it to sound and how we could achieve that in the studio. And I've enjoyed the production side of it. I mean, it's often been in conjunction with the rest of the band and the engineer, or co-production with another producer. So I've learnt a lot as well. I think in the early days, you don't know what you don't know, and I just thought, I can do that. Give me a shot at it. And so, like a lot of things, it's as much about the kind of self-belief and the will to do it as it is any kind of particular skill. But look, it's good fun, and I I love the studio environment, and I love my favorite part of the whole process is that creative side. Even at home, making something out of nothing is a pretty wonderful kind of thing to do.
Now, I read somewhere the other day you once had the pleasure of meeting the great Johnny Cash, who complimented you on the song "Smoking Johnny Cash."
Correct. Yeah.
Tell us about that moment. It must have been pretty special for you.
That was certainly sort of one of the highlights of the 20-year last span of the Blackeyed Susans. It was 1996, and we were in New York playing the CMJ Festival, and we happened to be on the same label, American Recordings, as Johnny Cash, and they set up a showcase kind of gig at a venue called Irving Plaza in Manhattan. So it was we opened the show, and then it was Wilco, and then Johnny Cash, and he was already pretty sick at the time, and so he kind of had he was not especially well, but we'd heard after that we'd played that he had been side of stage and heard the song "Smoking Johnny Cash," which we'd been playing for a while up to that point. So when we got an opportunity to meet him later, and it's a little bit like meeting royalty, they kind of lined us all up in a straight line, and he made his way down, shaking hands and exchanging a few words. And when it came to me, I thought I'd take a kind of polite Southern sort of approach, and I said, about that song, didn't mean any offence by it. And to which he said, not at all, thank you, I enjoyed it. And so that, that was my moment, with the great man, and he then moved on to the next person in the line, and, that was it.
That was it. Now, the delay of the Shangri-La album must have been a strain on the band back when it happened. How frustrating did that become at the time?
Yeah, look, that was, I guess one of the lowest times in terms of morale in the band. We'd spent a lot of years, working up and assembling what we thought was a great team of booking agents and managers and a record label and so on. And I think within the space of about 6 months or a year, we lost all three and kind of found ourselves, in a way, sort of kind of back sort of where we had started in terms of is it right to call it the infrastructure around us? I guess so.
I guess so.
I guess it is. So, yeah, look, that was, it was kind of, it was one of those things where, adversity also sort of produced an opportunity, and it was around that time we sort of dabbled in running our own label and financing our own records, and, it's certainly far more sort of financially rewarding to do it that way, but when you're more interested at the gig about, how much merch is sold or how many people walked through the door than as to whether, how well you played. I think it's, it's time to get a manager. But look, a lot of people are very good at managing themselves. I don't think, and running their own labels and all the facets of, what it means to be in a band. I don't think we're especially good at it, and personally, I'm at my most happy, as I say, when I can just concentrate on the music. But we made it through that patch, and as you can imagine, a 20-year career, it has all sorts of ups and downs in it, and you're like any sort of family. The relationships are probably the most important thing in a band. I think much harder to manage than, people always say, we split up for musical differences. But I think it's the interpersonal side of things that actually is the most difficult to manage in a band.
Was there ever a danger we were never going to hear that album? That it was never going to get out there?
Yeah, I think there was a very good chance of that happening. We went off and we made our covers album dedicated to the ones we love. In the meantime, while we shopped around for another deal, we thought, let's do dedicated, which is something we'd wanted to do for a while. In the meantime, and that could be kind of cheap and cheerful while we kind of found another deal. But we enjoyed sort of running and overseeing that to the extent that in the end we did it for Shangri-La as well. But as I say, look, this is the same sort of period that we were facing an uncertain future and wondering about whether the writing was on the wall and whether it was just time for us to break up. Or I think I remember saying when we started pre-production on Shangri-La, I said to the others, look, enjoy this because this could well be the last time we do this together. And I meant it.
Now, the box set that came out a couple of years ago is a wonderful piece of work. It must have been a real labour of love putting that together.
Yeah, that was really gratifying to put that together and see it released, and just to be able to hold something in your hands, that kind of represented your blood and sweat of 20 years was a fantastic thing, and I was really happy with it. I thought it looked great, and though I can still hear flaws here and there. Enough time has passed that even I can go back and listen to some of that early stuff almost as if I wasn't involved in it and sort of enjoy it just for what it is. But
tell us about the Secret in the Shape of a Song shows for paying tribute to David. They must have been pretty special shows to be part of.
They certainly were. I mean, first off the bat, it was really wonderful to hear the rest of the Triffids play together again, because they're really quite a remarkable band. And we were talking before about perhaps one of those lineups of the Susans sort of being less than the sum of the parts, but I think the Triffids, are real testament to that idea of a band of individuals who perhaps, on their own, aren't the most brilliant technicians, but put them together and they make a sound which is sort of utterly unique, and they really are sort of, greater than the sum of the parts. So, first off, it was great to hear them. It was great to hear the songs again, and celebrate sort of Dave's work and have it acknowledged as well. I think the Triffids have really enjoyed kind of a period over the last decade, perhaps unsurprisingly since Dave died. Everything they say about dying being good for your career, I think, is true. But just really good to see that acknowledgement sort of come through in terms of the Hall of Fame, and seeing Wide Open Road and Born Sandy at the top of best of singles and album lists, and just the amount of people also that have come out to see those shows. I think has been really good for everybody involved in it. And you can imagine, there's 13 up to 20 people involved in those shows, and a lot of us go a long way back, so that's kind of an extended family too, with all the sort of dynamics and complicated relationships, that you would associate with friendships and working relationships that go back that far.
Do you think the shows also did something a little bit towards reigniting public awareness of the connection between the Triffids and the Susans?
I guess so. I mean, I thought it was quite generous of the Triffids, I guess, in a way, to invite us to be part of those shows, and I'm very proud to use our spot in the show to sort of represent Dave's post-Triffids work, both with the Blackeyed Susans and his solo stuff, and then even with his material from his last band, Co-Star. So I guess, look, in the public's mind, I guess it has served as a way for them to make it easier for them to make the connections, I guess, between the bands.
I believe there's a documentary in the works somewhere there as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Jonathan Alley is behind a documentary film that is being made, and it's been in the works for a couple of years now. I'm not sure how far he's got with it, but look, there's a book as well. I think that it's been in the offing for about at least 5 or 6 years now, by Bleathen Butcher, who is a photographer and writer and old long friend of the band and of Dave's, and that's coming out as well. So there's still, I guess, a lot to be documented. Dave left such a body of work. He was such a driven and determined songwriter before anything else. That it's remarkable that someone who left us at 37 years of age sort of left over 200 songs, I think it was, and poetry and short stories and all sorts of things. Even at school, I went to high school, grew up with Dave, and even at school he was writing songs and documenting our lives at the time. He used to bring a tape recorder to school, and at lunchtime he would just record our conversations, not just mine, but the peer groups in general. And he just kind of always had that kind of creative flair that made him a pain, in creative writing classes, because he would always, outdo you.
Yeah. So it was certainly no surprise to you he became the writer that he did.
It was that part of it wasn't a surprise. I mean, I must admit, I was impressed by how far he took it and how far he took his writing. You can imagine growing up in Perth, in the 70s. There wasn't really any precedent, to think that, a great songwriter or a great band might be able to come from there. I particularly found it an absolute stretch, and though, I enjoyed sort of what we were doing and, I was impressed by his work, still I couldn't see how he would be able to take that to the world, I guess. And, so that side of it certainly did surprise me. And I guess in a way it pleasantly surprises me that here we are, now, 2011, still talking about not just those days, but about Dave and his work in general.
Yeah. So these days, Phil, outside of the Susans, what's keeping you busy?
Well, like any sort of gigging musician in Melbourne, I've got a variety of different sort of bands that I'm sort of playing and contributing to. There's a bit of a Susan sort of side show called The Sadists, which involves JP Shiloh, myself, and drummer Mark Dawson, which JP kind of sings and plays guitar. And the whole point of that band is to play the saddest songs that we can find, and have a little bit of fun that way. And I'm also sort of working with a band called the Ukuleles that Dan Luscombe plays in, a kind of dreamy, sort of slightly psychedelic faux Hawaiian kind of act. And with a sort of, I guess you call him alternative country cosmic cowboy good Jeff Williams. So that keeps me busy, and I do a bit of writing as well. I've been writing about songs and the history of songs, because I guess, that is my first love, words and music. So I've been doing that for a publication called the Melbourne Review. And I teach a few days too, as like many of us do.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, that's what I do, and we've all got little home studios these days, and I love nothing more than pottering about in there, and it's just, look, it's nice to still have a life in music, and I'm very grateful for that.
Absolutely. Did I hear there was a new Susans album in the works, or?
There's certainly enough songs for one.
Yeah.
More than enough, even probably at the moment. Look, yeah, there will be. There's a Rob Snarski and Dan Luscombe album that must be 90% finished, and that's due for release, I believe, in the first half of next year. And then, hopefully, our intention is to put out a brand new Blackeyed Susans album in the second half of next year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's terrific. We'll look forward to that. Hey, Phil, thanks so much for your time. It's been a real treat catching up with you.
You're welcome.
And congrats on your contribution to some wonderful bands over the years, and we're sure there's many great song ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Phil.
Bye-bye.
Bye.